Happy, oh, great. Happy Sunday, everyone. Happy Sunday. This is the Sunday Cruise to RC Rainbow Book Club. I am your primary moderator for this evening. My name is Sister Anna from the Second Rainbow Coalition Book Club, as well as BNERT, which is the Braves National Emergency Response Team, as well as the Guardian Rebellion. I'm happy to be your host this evening and to have my co-moderator, Sister Veronica. And today what we're going to do is continue our read on chapter 2, which is titled Our Family Journey Begins. And it's from the book, My People Are Rising by Comrade Aaron Dixon. And he's a legend, and I'm glad we had the opportunity to read his book. And also to let you know, we have some people who not only are Black Panthers, but they also have affiliation with the Black Panther parties back in the late 1960s and 70, when Dr. Huey P. Newton, and you had, our late Fred Hampton Jr. as the chairman, who were prominent active members, along with our honorary Bobby Seals. So they will grace us as well as with their presence. And we're going to begin tonight by going over our statement of unity. But before we do that, I would like to go around and have everyone to introduce themselves briefly. Just state your name and exactly your organization or your affiliation, and anything else you want to add, and then we'll go into our statement. Again, I am Anna, Sister Anna from Norfolk, Virginia. I am your moderator for this evening, and I am affiliated as well as a member of the 2RC book club.
You went mute. You went mute, sister. So, sister, you're on mute. I don't think she could hear.
She was having some difficulties with her phone.
Yeah, that's so Zoom for you, right? Zoom will do that
yeah,
to you, right?
Yes. So we'll just go ahead and continue on, and then hopefully she'll get to jump back on, because we anticipated that this may happen. So my name is Veronica Garcia, and I am a proud Chicana mother of 4, grandmother of 2. I like to say I am a nurturer of many more. Lover of justice, self-determination, and of course committed to the liberation of all oppressed peoples. I am the state chair for the state of Texas with the Partido de la Raza Unida, and also a co-founder of the party's Chicana Caucus. I am also a recent member of NASO under the leadership of Hy Thurman, and I am very honored to be here today with all of you.
My name is Sayero. You can call me Sayero. I'm with MPDM, which is the International Democratic People's Uhuru Movement, which is affiliated with the African People's Socialist Party. Black Panther, that's Black Panther for Life, and any affiliation with self-determined organizations like the Black is Back Coalition, which is 18 organizations combined, fighting for our independence, our self-determinating programs and processes, institutions, to get away from a system that does not like us. I'll elaborate on this stuff later on as I get into the little history of my experience as a Black Panther from 1969.
Uhuru.
Black Power, brother, Black Power. Our next guest, would you like to introduce yourself briefly with your name, the organization or affiliation you was with or are with?
I'll introduce myself. Hey, my comrades. I'm affiliated with the Black Panther Party Legacy Keepers. My auntie is an original party member who fought with the struggle back with Huey and Bobby Seale when they first started the party here in California. And I just, right now, I work with my community. I try to, find housing and to help my community get off the streets and just, liberate my people, everybody that is involved in the struggle. So I'm very honored to be here, and I'm proud to share this space with everybody, and all proud to the people.
All
And
power to the
also,
people.
yes, and also our sister here, she's a strong advocate when it's coming to Black health that matters, along with myself. So I'm very honored to have this young Panther to join us today. I appreciate it
Yes.
so much. Okay, next person, Elisa, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
I'm the co-chair for Second Rainbow Coalition, and I'm Minister of Defense for the New England chapter of the New Early Landlords.
Okay, thank
All
you.
power.
Thank you. And Sister Zombie?
Hello, I'm Zombie. I am the Global Outreach and Education Coordinator for Guardian Rebellion, one of the newer members of the Second Rainbow Coalition. I'm a nurse, been a ER and trauma nurse for 24 years. So I'm glad to have more medical people here. Awesome.
Yes. All power,
Yes.
sister.
Yes, thank you so much, sister. And we're going to have another guest to join us later. So she just called me, which I had to get off briefly to speak with her. And she is legendary herself. And I'm just waiting for her to grace us or honor us with her presence. But right now, we're going to go forward. And we're going to go with the statement of unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. And this is how we start our meeting. And first, I want to give the utmost respect and acknowledgement to our ancestors and our late comrades who had transitioned and with, our ancestors, and without them, none of this would be impossible in what we are doing. So I want to give acknowledgement to them as well. To start off with the statement of unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition, which I'm going to read the second part, dates back to its foundings on April the 4th, 1969 by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords and Young Patriot Organization. A number of other organizations joined the coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Raising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses have developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against the capitalist imperialist system in various ways around a particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. The historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its chromatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a, quote, race, in a, quote, struggle. He said that, quote, is a class struggle, God damn it, end of quote. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic community that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. The class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition. Therefore, the necessities to form a united front against their common class oppressor. The communist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule and subsequently used the entire repressive forces of the state, that includes police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agency, etc., in order to crush the emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for the united front that we best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, the Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members, we established our pragmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all of the organization and our coalition to our common professional discipline. 1, history has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representative of the capitalist, imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organization, structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is combined to. This is the historic mission we intended to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Hashtag all power to the people. Hashtag boots on the ground. All members of the coalition, is written in Kwame book as the New African Black Panther Party, the American Indian Movement, Indiana, in Connecticut, I believe that's correct, the White Panther Party, the Green Party of New Jersey, the Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional, the Brown Berets, FAIRY, which stand for Feminine Uprising to Resistant Inequality and Exploitation, the Guardian Rebellion, and is there another group that I need to include?
Did you get American Indian Northeast Woodland chapter?
No.
Yeah, it's not the Louisiana or whichever Kentucky one anymore, but it is the
Right.
New England
Yeah,
one.
Yeah,
The New
Right, the
England
one in
chapter.
Connecticut, right?
yeah, northeast, well, it's the entire East Coast, basically.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
it's the
the entire East
Northeast, yeah, Northeast Woodland chapter.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other organization?
Yes, I've listed some of them. I already put them in the chat and I'm sending them out right now. The Hands Off of Uru campaign that we have going on. You know, we were assaulted by the FBI recently. July 29th, on Friday, the FBI stormed into several of our areas, St. Petersburg, Florida, St. Louis, Missouri, and Black Power Radio Station down in St. Petersburg, Florida. But
Okay.
I'll talk about those later.
Okay, yeah, I believe that's as far as the United Panther movement, but as far as the second coalition, we just naming the ones that we are aware of and listed, but we'll look into that, and thank you, brother. Okay, I'm just going to briefly read the 6 disciplinary rules. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. 2, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activities while a member. 3, no members will engage in violence except in the extremities of self-defense. 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. Okay, is there any questions, concerns, or suggestions that anybody want to also include? Let me close this out. All right, so we are going to go into chapter 2. Sister, would you care to begin with chapter 2, and I will take over the rest whenever you're tired?
Okay, let me see here. So chapter 2 is our family journey begins.
Right.
The house I live in, the friends that I have found, the folks beyond the railroad and the people all around, the worker and the farmer, the sailor on the sea, the men who built this country, that's America to me. And that is a quote by Paul Robeson, The House I Live in, 1947. I entered into this world in the dead of winter, not far from the cold, windy shores of Lake Michigan on January 2nd, 1949, almost 4 years after the bloodiest of wars and shortly before the beginning of the Korean conflict. If at any point I start getting choppy, guys, please let me know.
Okay.
By the time, okay, thank you, sis. By the time my parents finished their personal baby boom, there were 4 little Dixons and 1 who did not make it. Diane, a victim of premature birth, paved the way for my entrance. For many years, I felt I was living lifeless. I always imagined what she would have looked like if she had safely made the trip. Joanne came first, taking the crown as the oldest. Then came Diane's short stay. Then I arrived. And then 16 months later, Elmer III emerged into the world. Finally, after 2 years had passed, Michael, the youngest, made his debut. We lived with my father's parents for a couple of years on Chicago's South Side at Langley Avenue and 51st Street, while my father completed his studies at the Art Institute of Chicago. When I was about 3 years old, we moved from Chicago to Champaign, Illinois. My father was offered a job as a technical illustrator at Chinook Air Force Base, which put his artistic pursuits on hold. Excuse me. We settled into Birch Village, formerly a military housing facility for Air Force pilots stationed at the base and their families. It would be our home for the next 5 years. Birch Village was made up of dozens of cement brick blocks in clusters, each 2 stories high with cold gray cement floors. Though the place looked drab from the outside, this in no way reflected the true character of the village. Many of the families were just like ours, fathered by upstart young Black men who had returned from World War II. These were men who had fought their way out of boot camp in the South just for the right to die in Europe or the Pacific. Their wives were hardworking, strong-willed women. Birchville was like one big family. You could go anywhere in the village, any time of the day, and feel secure. Here, our family struggled through the same adjustments as most young families. Our parents strove to feed and raise 4 hungry, needy kids, each with a distinctive personality and specific demands, while my mother and father shifted their focus to parenthood after having spent their early years worrying only about themselves. At 21, my mother had been 1 year shy of graduating from teachers college before my sister and brothers and I came on the scene. Her time would now be devoted to washing, feeding, loving, disciplining, hugging, and teaching 4 inquisitive young people. Joanne coined the names for all the elders in our family. My parents were known as Mommy and Poppy. My father's parents were called Dede and Granddada, and my mother's parents were called Ma and Papa. Everything seemed perfect and safe during those early years of my life in Birch Village. Everyone looked out for one another. As kids, we roamed around the entire perimeter of the village without a worry or care, getting into mischief and playing hide and seek and crash the circle. In the winter, we built snow forts and snowmen and sometimes huddled against the front door of the house, trying to be warm, wishing mommy would let us in. But with 4 kids, our staying in the 2-bedroom house all day was not an option. When nap time came, all 4 of us had to go to our room, whether we wanted to nap or not. My good friends, Lynn and Ricky, lived in the N unit. Their family had just arrived from Mississippi. We spent the night at each other's houses and walked to school together. It seemed like we would be friends forever. One of the elders of the village was Miss Naylor, toothless and hair in disarray. We kids would sneak into her house, which was full of jars with weird things held in their confines. Everyone looked out for Miss Naylor. The only white people we ever saw were the milkman and the bread man, who would sometimes give us hungry kids free jelly rolls. On a day I remember vividly, my brothers Elmer and Michael followed me down past the fence around the village perimeter and over a set of railroad tracks to a large rock quarry. We excitedly climbed the rock mountains as our feet sank in the gravel. We got stuck in a tar pit, barely able to haul ourselves out once we heard mommy calling us. Aaron, Elmer, Michael. We climbed back over the fence with tar-covered shoes and pant legs. I think this was the very first time the 3 of us ventured out together to do something we knew we weren't supposed to be doing. Mommy got a part-time job playing the piano at the local church. And at night, Poppy worked a second job making pizzas. I still remember those nights when after work, he would bring home delicious Italian pizzas to us waiting kids. And on weekends, Mommy and Poppy would go out to parties with friends from the village, drinking scotch and bourbon, dancing the bebop and the swing. During the summers, Poppy worked in Champaign while Mommy and us kids went to Chicago to spend those months with Granddada and Dede and Ma and Papa. They happened to live around the corner from each other. Granddada and Dede lived on 71st and Calumet, and Ma and Papa lived on 69th and Prairie. At night, out in the yard, we would chase lightning bugs with our cousins Mark and Keith, known as Kiki. On quiet days, I sometimes went upstairs at Ma and Papa's to talk to Grandma, my mother's grandmother, Emma, and listen to her stories of old while I brushed her long, silky gray hair, looking into her big, ancient brown eyes and touching her leathery, wrinkled skin. I loved spending those quiet times with her. They were the only connection I had to our family's long, sometimes difficult and painful history. When I was 5 years old, Grandma became very ill and requested that my mother send me from Champaign to her bedside in Chicago. Of course, Mommy thought it was rather ridiculous to summon a 5-year-old from almost 200 miles away, and so I did not go. Grandma passed not long after at the age of 94, taking with her almost a century of history encompassing the African American experience. I would miss those summer visits when I sneaked upstairs to sit in silence holding her caramel hands. Perhaps I reminded her of someone or something from her past. She reminded me of something I could not quite comprehend, yet I understood her special connection. Her face, her scratchy voice, her sometimes cranky disposition would always be there with me, following me, whispering to me, protecting me, and guiding me. When it came time for me to start kindergarten, I was not ready to leave my mother's side. I must have cried the whole day. First grade was easier since I started the school year with my new friends, taking shortcuts home through the Negro League baseball field, getting chased by the old black caretaker, barely making it over the fence and laughing from the fear of almost getting caught. By the third grade, I dreamed of someday soon running with the Birch Village Cats, the neighborhood gang. I often saw them chasing the alley cats, kids who lived outside the village. This was the first time I remember yearning to belong to a group. Up north in Chicago, I had seen the hastily written chalk words of the Blackstone Rangers, Chicago's largest gang, scrawled on walls and buildings throughout the South Side. I often wondered if I would join the Rangers when I got older. One night in 1956, there was a knock on the door, and standing in the doorway, there were two white men dressed in dark suits. Poppy didn't let the men in. He exchanged words with them and then hastily closed the door. He later told me that these men in the dark suits were from the FBI and they had come to question him about his involvement in the Communist Party. Poppy had been part of Paul Robeson's youth security contingent when Robeson had appeared at Soldier Field in Chicago in the 1940s. Paul Robeson was an almost mythic figure in Black American history. A two-time American football player, he graduated from Columbia Law School, played professional football, and then went on to become a world-renowned and highly paid stage actor and singer. He toured the world as a performer and as an ambassador of social justice, and his speeches packed Soldier Field in Chicago during the 40s. Committed to justice for all working people, Robeson joined the Communist Party, which led to his being blacklisted and banned from international travel, and many recordings of his performances and speeches were destroyed. After returning from the war, Poppy, inspired by Robeson, had attended some Communist Party meetings in an effort to understand what had happened to him and others in the Deep South. There was another incident of savage racism that affected Poppy deeply in August 1955. Emmett Till, a 4-year-old Black teenager from Chicago, was visiting relatives in Mississippi. He made the fatal mistake of speaking to a white woman. That night, a truckload of white men abducted him from his uncle's home and took him down by the river where they tortured and brutally beat him to death. His mother had the courage to leave his casket open during the funeral in Chicago. The pictures of little Emmett Till's tortured body were seen by millions of Black Americans, thanks to the work of Jet Magazine and other Black publications. Finally, the terror of the Jim Crow South was exposed to the world. The murder of Emmett Till had a profound effect on Poppy. It brought back a flood of memories of his personal experiences in Mississippi and laid bare the hypocrisy of the United States. In response to this tragic murder, Poppy wrote this poem. Deep in the heart of Dixie, where the cotton blooms in June, an old Black man tills the field, humming a sad tune. His heart was heavy, his eyes were full, his body aching and sore. I wish I was dead, I wish I was dead. My heart can't take no more. They took a little Negro boy and chopped and smashed his eye. They tormented, teased, and cut him up just to make him die. They tore off an ear when he shed a tear, and they beat him in the face. Each mark and scar was symbolic of suffering by the Negro race. They threw him in the river, his hands and legs bound, hoping that his body would never be found. The river current surged and splashed to free its mangled prey, but it didn't matter anymore, for it was Emmett's judgment day. The two white men who did these things are free to lynch and kill. Now, my God, I pray to you, avenge poor Emmett Till. The hate and evil in this world is something sad to see. Why, oh Lord, do they hate us? Why can't we all be free? The children played on the courtroom floor. The grown-ups drank cold beer. They laughed and they joked and enjoyed themselves like they had no God to fear. I'll never forget you, Emmett Till, and how you horribly died. I'll never forget the smiling jurors and how the lawyers lied. Well, Emmett's gone, ain't nothing to do but push this white man's plow. I guess little Emmett made his peace because he's with his father now. And that is a poem here quoted by Elmer J. Dixon Jr., Champaign, Illinois, over 1955. Poppy never spoke of this horrific crime again, but his poem was always there for us kids as a reminder of what horrible injustices Black people faced in America. By the time I was 10 years old, I had memorized this poem and often took it to school to share it with others. In 1957, my father received job offers in Spain, Alabama, and a place called Seattle. I was hoping he would choose Spain, but to my dismay, he chose Seattle, somewhere far away in the northwestern part of the country. At first, I felt excitement at the thought of traveling to a distant place and the possibilities of experiencing new things and meeting new people. When it sank in that I would be leaving the only place I had known as home, this safe haven of family and friendly Black faces, I was devastated. I would have to leave all my friends, peculiar old Miss Naylor, and the security of Birch Village. most of all, I would miss the trips to Chicago to visit with Ma and Bop Bop and Day Day and Granddada, as well as my cousins and all other relatives scattered throughout the Chicago South Side. I would miss the family barbecues when Granddada would cook his Kentucky-style barbecue ribs with a strong accent on vinegar. He would wrestle with us kids, letting us ride on his large back and broad shoulders before tickling us to death. On hot nights, we sat on his lap while he smoked his pipe or played his harmonica, rubbing his rough, tickly whiskers against our soft brown faces. I would miss watching Bop Bop come home from work at the post office, dressed neatly in a suit and tie, bringing us his bus transfers to use as play money. He would quietly go upstairs to change, come down with his Bible and Christian Science monitor, sit quietly on the corner of the black leather sofa, put his spectacles on over a serious face and silently read. This was his way of keeping at bay the demons of alcoholism, which he had soundly defeated many years earlier. I would miss my grandmother, Dede, who always reminisced about the old days, sharing stories of her family, demonstrating the Charleston, my father's sister, Aunt Doris, and my cousins, Mark and Keith, and Ma, dressing us like prissy rich kids, greasing our faces with Vaseline, feeding us non-fried food and wheat bread, and constantly reciting from the Bible. My grandparents represented everything that we were and hoped to be. Now we sadly had to leave them behind. I remember Granddad standing there with his big bug eyes and thick eyelashes, his stomach bulging over his brown trousers. Day Day stood next to him in the brown flowered dress that she often wore on hot, muggy days. Have a safe trip, and brother, you be careful, you hear? Day Day always affectionately referred to her son as brother. We drove off slowly, with us kids looking out the back window at the two figures standing on the green lawn, looking back at us. I would never forget that image. It took me many years to forgive my parents for taking us out of this haven of comfort. I carried a lot of anger for a long time, not really understanding or caring why. I never quite felt that security, that contentment, that familiarity again. Sister, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, sister. That was very deep. Which Aaron Dixon has spoke about his experience growing up in his neighborhood, where we look at our situation now concerning a village, living in a village opposed to living in a neighborhood, where back then, there were people looking out for each other. And nowadays, you can see there is a contrast where we live in a community, but do we know our neighbors? And back then, who was the neighborhood police person, which happened to be the old or elderly lady in the window, or someone that everyone knew as an elder and respected. And now it's like you're lucky to know more than two people names. And also, Brother Aaron talked about the racism back then, and it's just amazing. I wouldn't say amazing, but it's just crazy that we reverse into what happened back there concerning, I would say, Mississippi, the lifestyle and living in Mississippi, because I have lived there for over a year, and Jim Crow, and again, racism. And it's just crazy to hear that the same state had resurrected the Jim Crow laws, where we are revisiting something that we fought against as a people. And he also mentioned through that turbulent time, there still was a unity among family members, where you had your grandmother, where you had a grandmother, your mother, your great-grandmother, and they were family. It was a close-knit type of bond with your family. And today, you can't even get family members to actually sit at a table to eat a meal.
Mhm.
And have we lost the family value where we are experienced what we had experienced back in the past, but yet we are moving ahead, but then again, we are reversing backward?
Mm.
And I like to add, direct this question to our elder, our sister, if she's on here, Sister Cleo Silvers, who not only was a Panther, but also a member of the Young Lords, who took over the hospital in New York, as well as the church, where, if you haven't seen the documentary on her organization in that event, please, I welcome you to do that, because
I have
that
seen
was
it,
real
sis.
revolutionary work.
I have seen it, and it is very powerful.
Yes, it is. Sister Silvers, would you like to embrace us as exactly your experience and what we can learn from the read. I don't know if, yeah, she's still on mute. I could see, well,
Unmute. Thank you. Thank you very much.
yes.
You know, as a person, I'm 76 years old. And I think I'm close to the same age as Aaron Dixon is. And my experience is very close to what he talked about. I was raised in a community that came from South Carolina as a group from 3 churches in South Carolina because of the Jim Crow and racism down in the South in the early 1900s, 1901. I believe that's the date that they came up to Philadelphia. And then later on, they lived in downtown Philadelphia and later on moved to outside of Philadelphia. And when I was 2 and 3 years old, I was allowed to walk around the neighborhood close by within the block and meet the people in the community. So everybody in the neighborhood knew me. You know, I knew everybody and I knew all of everybody's children. And all the old people, I would go visit them, and because they had cake and lemonade, and they would give you cookies, and so that you would come back and have a conversation. I was very conversational at 2 and 3 years old, so I would go and tell everything that was going on in my house to the people in the neighborhood. And then I think when I was about 5, we got a telephone, and my grandmother was the secretary of the church. People's Baptist Church, which was right across the street from our house. And she had a very extensive telephone book. And what I used to do for fun when she wasn't looking was get on the phone, call up somebody and say, "Oh, this little Cleotha." And I was calling to find out if your refrigerator is running. And the people, I called the preacher, everybody, "Is your refrigerator running?" And they would say, yes, Cleotha, my refrigerator's running. I said, "You better run and catch it and hang up the phone." You know, very silly. But that was the community. And in my household was where everybody in the neighborhood, all over the neighborhood, came to find out what was happening with Black people. So in my house, we had every Black newspaper, the Pittsburgh Courier, the Amsterdam News, the Chicago Defender, all the newspapers from all over the Black community, all over the country. We had we had the Crusader, the Crisis Magazine, 1,000 lynchings, everything that could be possible. Every book, every magazine, every periodical having to do with Black people we had in our house, and that's what people would come to see. And we also had a piano, so people would come and practice on our piano and all that stuff. And we lived as an extended family. My grandmother and grandfather lived in the house with us, my father, my mother, my auntie and her husband and her 2 sons, my cousins. And then I had cousins that lived right down the street and they would come over on Sundays. My grandmother was this fabulous cook. And everybody in the neighborhood and our church was waiting to get invitations to come over to have dinner at our house. So I got to meet so many interesting people. And then after dinner, we had wood stove. My grandmother cooked on a wood stove.
Wow.
Fabulous cook. She made, you know, chicken and dumplings, fried chicken and potato salad, and collard greens, and fried fish on Friday nights. And we had grits on, you know, on Saturday mornings and stuff. I mean, she was just a wonderful, wonderful cook. And everybody in my house was, they were expected to have a job. So pretty much everybody had a job. My mother and father, my father had 2 jobs, my mother had 2 jobs. My aunt and uncle both had a job. And I can tell you what their jobs were, very interesting jobs. My mother was worked in a clothing factory. My father was a construction worker. And he had 2 jobs, and then he built 2 homes after work while in my lifetime, which was an amazing thing. He was a brilliant man. My mother was very interesting. She was about 12 or 13 years younger than my father. And she had me, she had my brother. She was a scandal in the whole neighborhood. She had my brother when she was 15 years old, my
Oh,
half
wow.
brother. And she had me when she was 17. And so I thought she was my girlfriend. I mean, that's the way we interacted, like she was my girlfriend. She taught me how to read when I was 3 years old. Anyway, I'm getting away from the subject. The subject is that our community was very close. Black people, everybody knew everybody else, children. If you saw somebody's child doing something that wasn't right, walking in the wrong direction from school or anything, you was on the phone calling up that person's mother. I mean,
Right.
and telling them out the window, you better go turn around and go back to school before I come out there and give you a whooping.
That's
Now,
it.
nobody ever had to tell me that because I was always doing what I was supposed to be doing.
That is good. That is good. And that is like one thing that I remember as far as my upbringing is concerned, because even when I was in kindergarten, in grammar school, you know, I would just cross the street with some of, you know, my classmates, and it will be the crossing guard who say, now, y'all know you're too young to be crossing the street and leaving the campus or leaving the grounds of the school. And, you know, and she would threaten, I'm going to call your mother, I'm going to call your parents. And we was like, you don't know who our parents are. And sure enough, we get that, my mother would get that phone call and she would look at me and she said, what are you doing this? And the whole story would run down to her. And my mother would tear my behind up. And it just comes down to, again, that's when the community was so close, even through a turbulent time where everybody knew everybody and everybody was like family. And I say, well, what is the difference? Why is it so different now where, you know, there's more people that's so isolated where you can't even get family members together to sit down for dinner at 7 or 8 o'clock. They eat them by the TV. Go ahead, sister.
I just wanted to say in my household at that time, it was mandatory that everybody show up and sit at the table, but not, my father had a thing as not only did you sit down at the table and have dinner together, but you discussed what you learned. My grandfather had to say what he learned that day. And I had to say, when I was 3 years old, what I had learned. I learned my ABCs today. You know, but you have to say what you learned that day and have an interesting conversation to contribute to the dinner conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think of the fact that also, was it because of the time where you had, I guess, the merging of the Black movement after all those leaders had passed away? Because I remember seeing everybody reading a book. And today you see a number of people just looking at their phone and so glued where they are so dependent upon it, they'll lose their mind. And I say, we have really lost that form of communication of saying good morning or going to bed and say, you know what, the day may be gone or it may be the worst, but I love you. And I want you to know this is the last word that you hear from me for this day. So when you wake up, you know this is the message, you know this is the feeling. And it's not the same today. It's not the same today. Panther Queen, would you like to say something? Our young one.
Can
We can
everybody
hear
hear
you.
me?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to say thank you, Cleo, for your, you know, the story. It was very inspiring, you know, because I grew up in a home like that too. But I was raised by my grandparents. So I was always, you know, respect your elders and listen to what your elders have to say. And they told me a lot of the things that you were just talking about. They taught me that also. So I just want to say thank you, and that I honor, you know, who you are as an elder and as a person within the community.
We appreciate that. Well, I would
Mhm.
like to ask you a question in concerning to our community today, especially with our youth or the young generation. Is there something that you notice in your upbringing, in addition to what you have mentioned, where you see that is quite different from back in the I would say the 70s or the 80s versus today, or something that you would recommend, Panther Queen?
Panther Queen.
Is she mute? Yes, she's mute. You want to unmute yourself? Because we can't hear you, Panther Queen. Okay. How about you,
I can
brother?
barely hear, you guys are going in and out. I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. I was mentioning about our community of what it is today in general, the community opposing to growing up in the 70s and 80s. Is there anything that you would recommend which shows quite of a contrast to what was, where there was more of a close connection versus what is happening now in the community and within the family member?
I just think a lot of it is, a lot of the youth are forgetting to respect their elders and, to just have that respect for the community and look out for one another and, instead of trying to kill each other. I think that the respect, they're losing a lot of loyalty and respect for each other.
Yes. And it's called value because of the fact that back then we were informed that you better listen to what your grandma say.
Mhm.
And now
Mhm.
by seeing and looking at our situation now with the community, we barely know the names of our great grandmothers, let
Yeah.
alone the legacy that was left for us to continue on with. And then again, is that disconnect. And
Mhm.
brother Oshosi, did I enunciate your name correctly?
Yes, you did a fine job on that.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, Paul Robeson was murdered by the state in 1972, poisoned.
Mm.
He was also a screen actor as well as a stage actor, to be on the correct side of that. Conrad Dixon does depict the era very well. Now, I was born in 53, but I was born in Detroit. I was raised in Chicago from the age of 3 until, my adulthood. But 71st Street and Calumet, I'm very familiar with that area because in that particular area, we had the Disciples. That was the gang at that time. Then you had on the west side, you had the Black Pea Stone Nation. Now, what brought all of the gangs together was Chairman Fred Hampton.
Right.
And this is real because whereas they were, because I tried to stay away from gangs because it seemed senseless to me, where they were shooting and killing each other. And unlike today where they got these kinds of weapons that could destroy houses and kill up a whole lot of people. When Fred hit the scene, we were so magnetized by just his speaking and how he culminated and how you came up with the Rainbow Coalition is because he definitely went to the Chicanos. He talked to white Klansmen. And he talked with them and had a permanent stance, one of self-determination. He inspired the community just as Huey P. Newton and Eldridge Cleaver and others did out west in California. But he inspired Chicagoans to get really involved. Now, how I got pulled into the Black Panthers was through Malcolm X. Reading the autobiography of Malcolm X let me know distinctly that civil rights was not the way to go. I had seen some failures. We wanted to acquiesce to a voting stance, but we made no demands. So when we voted, now to remind you, Democrats were Dixiecrats. Dixiecrats were Klansmen. And we all recall that. And so the same Democrat would come for the vote, and we'd do the vote. I didn't vote at the time. I was too young, but I watched my mother. And we got nothing out of the deal. We got urban renewal, where they destroyed many Black communities throughout the country.
Mhm.
And this was the ending, as Sister Cleo, who I have a lot of honor for. You just a tough Panther lady.
Mhm.
But that's when they destroyed Black doctors. That's when they destroyed the wholesomeness of schools where we had Black teachers, right? Destroyed all of it. They began the busing, all these things that deteriorated the strength that they saw the Black community was coming into, had been into. Just as you said, we had Black lawyers, we had Black doctors, we had Black educators, we had Black librarians, we had all of the institutions that kept us grounded. Our mothers, as you mentioned, sisters, kept us abreast of family. Now, my mother, she lived in Chicago. My grandmother lived down in Memphis. And my mother was raised in Mississippi. And we know on that Gulf Coast, it was harsh. They came up very hard. We didn't have a clue. My mother would shield us from the negativity, attempt to, but you could see it on the streets. When you saw somebody very, very poor, you knew that's you too. That was all of us.
Absolutely.
That was our identity. We also knew that we needed to do something different than just civil rights. Civil rights, in my opinion, it's my opinion, did not teach us self-determination. It taught us to acquiesce.
Speak.
So in acquiescing, we got weaker. So the fiber of that togetherness became a split. And you saw it not only in households, because when I was talking Malcolm, my mother was talking Martin. But don't get me wrong, I did not realize the strength of Martin's revolutionary spirit, because he did say, I feel real bad that I took my people into a burning oven.
That's right.
That's right. The peaceful move and things of that nature caused big discourse and definitely contradictory, because why would I not want to defend myself if a cop's beating the hell out of me with a baton?
Right.
Why would
Absolutely.
I not want to defend my women if a cop was beating my woman, right? So in that, there was a split in my household. I think I was the only one that split that way. I then joined the Panthers in 1969. I was compelled to do so. I worked in the free breakfast program. I had a lot of good times. And you know, when we come together as a group, we some awesome people. I met a whole lot of awesome brothers and sisters. I revered these brothers and sisters. I looked up to them because they were my leadership, you see. So when in 69, I joined in 69, shortly thereafter, December the 4th, 1969, that cracker, Daly, that cracker, the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, those crackers, Ed Berdoliak, sent the police in while they were sleeping. As you well know, they said it was 99 bullets. They shot over 999 bullets into that house. Then they went in and murdered Fred Hampton. He was in the bed with his wife, woman. She was pregnant. And then they came right in. He was bleeding, shot him in the head while he was in the bed. They were not weaponized at all. Well, matter of fact, Mark Clark had a shotgun. He did get off one round, but he didn't have really that kind of time because they were shooting through the door. So they murdered our brothers while they were sleeping. This was planned.
They had been drugged also.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard about that.
They had been drugged.
I didn't hear about the drug.
Yeah,
Yeah,
had
I
been
heard about
drugged
it.
by the young man who was the person that
The traitor,
infiltrated infiltrated the organization.
O'Neill,
yes.
Okay, yeah.
And he gave them a Kool-Aid for dinner with some kind of a drug in it that made them sleep.
Right,
Yes.
a sedative.
Sedative, that's
Which
right.
is why they were too not alert.
That's right.
So
Right.
they did, when they did that, it brought a lot of depression
Mm.
in the area. Then you started seeing after that, after the murders of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, on the 12th of December, if you recall, they assaulted and murdered 30 Black Panthers in Watts.
Right.
They murdered 30 in Watts, and that's when SWAT became the initiative. That's when they created SWAT, was for the Black Panther Party.
Mhm.
Wow.
My mother got me out of town. I went down to Memphis. I was selling Black Panther newspapers in the school, on the grounds. I got kicked out of school.
I live in Memphis, Tennessee right now.
Or do you? Yeah, I
Yes.
stayed on Laclede.
Okay, I live in Cordova.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I'm not too familiar. I was only there for about a year.
Mhm.
But there was a big difference to me. I began to see the party weaken. The revolution had been destroyed. That's what I saw. And also, I remember being sniped at and having to jump through somebody's door, scared the hell out of them. I told them to hit the floor, they shoot. And my mother got me back, told me I needed to go to the military. I joined the military, only stayed 11 months because I did not like those racist
Mhm.
practices at all. I didn't like how they treated me with indignity or any of my other brothers at all. I fought with my boot camp instructor physically the first 2 weeks in boot camp. So, you know, I had a big, I don't know what they call me. They say, well, he's got a mental illness. No, I'm not mental. I know
Mm.
that you're a dog.
Right.
a rabid dog. After then, when I got the military, I began to see things change. I got out of the military in 72, October. I came back home. I saw this big billboard that says, I do my thing, you do your thing, in our Black community. And I knew then there was a drastic change. I began to see the busing taking place. I began to see we stopped shopping in the neighborhood because all that was destroyed too. We had to start going out to the malls. The decimation of Black people came readily. It was prepared. It was planned. These are things that pre-planned to destroy the Black community, to weaken.
And drugs. Don't forget heroin.
The disco, the drugs, right? Was down. Yeah, you're right. Heroin, real deep in Chicago and in New York, and the pills,
Mhm.
Molly, Black Mollies, LSD, other things to keep us weak, and then going to clubs, forgetting about our former ordeal with these police, where they took people down and they built a 5-story underground torture chamber on 55th Street and took a lot of brothers down there. I mean, they did some mass shocking their penises, cutting on them. Matter of fact, the cracker that did that was in position for over 30 years, named Burrs. And they didn't indict him. He died with his pension. So it's nothing changed. And when you talk about the disorder that goes on with our youth and the phones, are we always on the phone? And the dissension in the families is because we failed. We allowed them to tell us, a lot of us, if you spank your child, you'll go to jail.
Mhm.
We allowed them with the drugs and the weaknesses and the sicknesses and the oppression and the repression and the suppression to dictate to us what we're going to do, when we're going to do, and how we're going to do it. Now I see there's a change. I see that people all over the globe are telling America no. I see that the African nations are telling them no. I see that, you remember Kamala Harris just went there. She was born in Africa, but she is not an African in that sense. She is a neo-colonizer.
Right.
A petty bourgeois neo-colonizer.
Right.
She has sent so many brothers and sisters to prison in California
Absolutely.
under the Joe Biden bill.
Mhm.
Under the
Yes.
Joe Biden bill, he put 100,000 cops on the streets. Just Friday, and I know I'm jumping, but this is all inclusive because these brothers struggled.
Mhm.
Mumia Abu-Jamal's was denied a new trial, even with all the evidence. They keep our brothers and our sisters in prison till we die. Sandiata Kohli, as you well know, sister, you from New York, got out at the age of 85, at the deathbed, right? So this is what we're up against. And I know this, and I'm gonna say this, is I believe that all factions need to work collectively. Right now, we are at true war. There should be no way in our minds that I'm better, my organization is better than yours. We're all Africans catching the same hell from the same enemy, the colonizer, that we've been catching for over 600 years and beyond. Because you look at the Pope and all those sycophants or sick people, demented, that sent the Crusades into Africa. They're still over there raping our women. They're still over there taking our goods, those are our resources. They're still over there working those children with no shovels to bring up tungsten or lithium, dangerous stuff by hand, right? Don't feed them.
But you see, brother, I just want to just say that, you know, with all the resources that Africa has and can match their money, you know that America going to do whatever they can to sanction Africa because of the material resources that Africa have. And also to go and discuss about the neighborhood, yes, there was a lot of drugs in the neighborhood, and that would cause my grandmother back in the 50s, before I was born, to have my mother and my aunt to leave, to move out of New York City to another hellhole, which was Mississippi, to a boarding school. And, you know, that's the culture shock to leave, you know, urban city like New York, where you're known and seen as a city slicker, to go to the deep South, in which I had lived there myself in Meridian, Mississippi for a year, and experience racism is most, oh God, treacherous time. And it's remarkable that my parents were able to survive that, because my father is from Chicago, Illinois. So you got two city slickers living in the South, but my grandmother had to keep my mother there. So this way she won't end up becoming an addict, because all my mother's friends were dying at a fast rate behind heroin. When I was being raised, my mother, she was a nurse student to become a nurse, and she kept me in the house with my brother, where, you know, you better answer that phone call by one ring. If not, your ass gonna be tore up. And you know, though my parents were big community activism, there were many times my father was brutalized by the police. They will beat this man right in front of me. And, you know, when I scream and said, "Stop it, leave my dad alone," you know, they would scream at my mother and say, "Get this little bitch out the way," you know. And I mean, they would come into our house. They would slam my parents' door. It would be like 7 or 8 of them beating my dad up, which I, you know, was terrorized behind, because my dad was a strong advocate, and he will curse out people if he see any sister, any woman being beat up. He don't care. If he's the only person, he will defend them. He will defend a woman. He will defend a Black woman. He will not allow anyone to speak in such a degrading way to them. And I was raised up living, that's why when it comes to the drugs in our neighborhood, it took a whole and terrorized and tore up and ripped up my neighborhood so bad, where we will see people flying off the 19th floor roof and their bodies splattering down to our feet. Drugs everywhere in the hallway. And I seen this growing up as a child. And still, I was with my family, with my dad and my mother in the same household, and we still had that closeness, which you don't see now. And I want to ask our two, elders, what was it that hold that bond with the family? And I say family with the community. Was it because everybody had a book and was reading it? Because I remember my dad would have his conversation, talk his mess, but he always had a book in his hand.
Well, my mother kept a belt and a book, right? So,
A belt and a book.
hey, listen, the belt and the book, and she called the belt Ike, right, after Eisenhower.
Oh boy.
But it was no way we could pass that door and my mother know not what's going on. Just your mother, she knows you, right? She knows everything about your mood. She knows every detail about your attitude or your character. So don't you have homework tonight?
No,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am. Well, we're gonna eat. You're gonna eat in there, and then you're gonna get on your homework. So we go to dinner. We sat at the table and we did eat. It's just like, and it was a wonderful thing. And no side talking at the table. When you get done eating, do your homework, then you're gonna get a bath. We didn't have a shower. And then you're gonna take your tail to bed. We was in the bed by what? 8:30, 9 o'clock, right?
And
There was structure. There was structure.
Very deep structure.
Yeah.
It really was.
Where my mother worked, she was a single parent. We had a babysitter named Miss Johnson. She spanked your tail with a wet towel, right? Mother Johnson, she didn't play with us. And the neighbors looked out for us. The neighbors, where you going, boy? You know your mama don't want you to go out there. Take your tail back in the house. My mother wanted us in the house. If it was wintertime, we had to be in by 6. If it was summertime, we had to be outside in the front of the house and in at 8. So that was a real good structure, safety, because you're right. Today, our children are off the chain. Our children are doing whatever they want to do. But then you got to look at this. The parents of these kids today raised themselves.
That's right.
The parents of those parents raised themselves.
But
Due to the drugs that you talked about, I saw this since the 80s. I saw this happening.
Can I say something about this? We all have such important stories because we're all victims of the capitalist system.
Yes.
we are.
It is capitalism, the system that destroys communities, that destroys families, that destroys individuals.
Absolutely.
I want to say something quickly, sister, respectfully. That's the reason why my family struggled so hard and we were never on welfare, because of the fact the system had desecrated the Black family, where the mother could not be with the father. It could not be a nuclear family. And my parents have been so against it, but then again, we was actually starving. Like I was mentioning, we only had grilled cheese sandwiches from, the Federal Cheese, which make the best grilled
The commodities.
And it was free. And we had either popcorn or macaroni. That was it. That was it. And then later on, we graduated to mushroom soup and a turkey neck. And it's just so crazy now. If by looking at the structure of the family, which consists primarily of the single family household, and it's gonna always be that way because of the fact of the nuclear Black family is a threat and still remains a threat. And before I give back to you, Sister Cleo, with all due respect to you, Queen. I just want to hear from our other participant
Oh.
and co-moderators, Sister Zombie, as well as Sister Elisa. Is there anything that you want to add in as far as what Aaron Dixon had mentioned in his upbringing?
I have a piece I want to share. So could you all hear me well?
Yeah, Sister Veronica.
Okay,
Oh,
so-
shoot. Wait a minute. Sister Zombie has her hand up.
Okay, let's go with Zombie first.
I don't see that. I'm sorry, Sister Zombie. I
No,
do
no,
apologize.
no. You didn't have to worry about that. I just put it up right before Veronica started talking.
No, Sister
Oh.
Zombie, get on it, Sister Zombie, get on.
All I,
it.
all I was gonna say is I'm very much enjoying sitting here listening to you guys, and you have hit as soon as I think it was Miss Cleo, hit as soon as the words capitalism came out of her mouth, I knew I didn't even have to talk, because
Oh.
that's exactly what I have been sitting here thinking this whole time, is that all of these struggles that we are going through, whether we're white, black, or brown, when it comes to families and the destruction of the family, all has to do with capitalism. You know, because capitalism doesn't allow us to have that stable family structure anymore. You know, the prison industrial complex doesn't allow us to have it. You know, they got to keep those for-profit prisons full. So they're going to take all those black fathers, all those brown fathers, and lock them up. And that breaks up the family. You know, so y'all have already said it. I'm just gonna mute myself and sit back and
No, you know
listen to
what
all of
I'm
you all.
So let me ask you all this question. We're going to get to our honorary Sister Cleo. Do you find that this anti-drug war, as well as, I guess, taking away the Second Amendment or anything in line of that, is going to, you know, come back and also put more pressure, stress, and destruction among oppressed people?
Let me say that Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. It has
Right.
to do with what the white supremacists want. White supremacists want the ability to have arms so that they can shoot Black people. This is the way the system is set up, so they can shoot Black people just like they shot that brother who was running on the street anytime they want to. So that's a struggle. That's a struggle of the capitalists among themselves. White supremacy is one of the greatest elements of capitalism, and that's why it keeps the Black people intimidated and afraid, because of the use of all of these guns that can kill animals. You know, they want to have all these guns on the street and all this murder and killing going on. Under capitalism, that's a good thing. That's the way to do it. We need to have the ability to defend ourselves, because we are constantly under the threat of all of this violence and murder and all of that.
Still, so how can we do that? How can we do that?
How can we, by uniting, becoming more like we used to be, when there was more unity among us in our communities, where we can go anywhere. Like as a member of the Black Panther Party, let me explain something to you. I can go anywhere in this country, and I can stay in somebody's house. Anytime if I need anything, my brothers and sisters that still are around, because many of us have passed. I'm an elder now. I'm 76 years old. But what I'm saying to you is that we can unite and build the strength to defend ourselves as workers. And there should be, and we shouldn't have to do it all by ourselves. There should be other working class people that recognize that the system is not working for them either. The
Okay,
system
but
is set up to destroy anybody that is a
Right.
worker. And it's only that 1% that is
Okay.
living well and being helped by the system the way it stands now. Economically, politically, socially, the whole country, that is the majority of the people are being hurt by a system of capitalism. And those that don't recognize that they're being hurt, there's a problem. When
Oh
you
yeah, they're
can't
gonna
see
find
it,
out.
yeah,
They're gonna find out. But you brought up what element, important element, and this is what I noticed in our two leaders. If you compare Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, who after his pilgrim trip to Mecca became El Hajj Malik El Shabazz.
Mhm.
Martin Luther King was a mobilizer, but he was a horrible organizer. His wife was outstanding, and she was behind the civil rights movement, where Hoover was so terrified behind what she was doing that he ordered two teams of FBIs to follow her even to the bathroom for her to take a leak. But then again, you had Malcolm X, who was El Hajj Malik Shabazz, who was a great mobilizer as well as an organizer. Now, if you compare to what's going on now, where do you think our leadership is at when it's coming to those two essential things that we need? Because I see the problem is, and you hear it quite often, we need to organize, we need to organize. And if you look at the 10-point program, there's one word that make a difference, which our brother had mentioned earlier, which is not being used. And it shows that we need to update the 10-point platform program. Same thing that's in the Appendix 3 under the new African Black Panther Party 10-point program. And they are saying constantly of what we want. We need to move away from what we want to what our brothers say, to what we need to demand.
What we demand.
Right.
What we demand.
So
let me
what would
let
Go
me just say this about our demands. You see that there was a system that has been overturned by Black people previous to the capitalist system. So I want everybody to recognize that the system of slavery was an economic, a social, and political system. And that's the system that began by the theft of African people off of the coast of Africa and brought here to work for no compensation. And this country became a very rich country based on the free labor of Africans. And African people built this country. Everything that is here, the roads, the buildings, everything that is this country was built by African slaves. And it took the same group of African slaves 400 years to overturn the system of slavery. And finally, with the war, okay, it had to come to war before we were able to overturn slavery. And believe me, it was the African people of African descent fought like hell in the Civil War to end slavery. And some of them at the beginning of the war was like, oh no, we're going to be free. No one wants to be a slave. And none of those Africans that were brought over here that are our ancestors wanted to be slaves. They always wanted to be free, and they always fought. It just took them time to understand the system and to be able to fight it and overturn it. And as a matter of fact, the difficulty of uniting was where the white people did it. They cut off our ability to interact with each other because they would stop our ability to speak to each other. But we all learned English. Some of us learned it at a different level, and there were different levels of political development among us. For instance, Harriet Tubman say, and Frederick Douglass, not Fred Hampton at that time, Frederick Douglass understood at a different level than some of the people that were continuing to be under the lash of slavery. And we should understand what slavery did to us. Slavery destroyed some element of us because we're still suffering from the trauma of having been slaves in this country. So this is another problem that we're facing. We have so many problems that we have to undo among ourselves, but we have to recognize that those problems exist so that we can begin to work on them, so that we can begin to trust each other, so that we can begin to unite, so that we can begin to not be turning and going running telling the man what's going on in our system, in our struggles. You know, it is, all of these things are so important. And yes, they bring in all kinds of things. They bring in drugs, they bring in disunity. And by the way, J. Edgar Hoover said in some of his writings that what he feared the most about what was going on in the Black community was the development of a Black Messiah. That is why Fred Hampton was murdered, because Fred Hampton looked like he had the potential to become a Black Messiah. Same with Malcolm X. He had the potential to mobilize the people, the Black people, and to gain their respect and become the Black Messiah. And is in fact the same with Brother Martin Luther King.
And I want to add quickly that it's just amazing that when I was doing my research, within this circle of people was the same person that was in with security of Dr. Martin Luther King, was the same person within the same security of Malcolm X. You know, and it comes down to, you know, the infiltrators and informers, where my saying is, it's not who you suspect, it's who you respect to be that individual, you know, where we have to come down. How can we vet a person when, you know, it comes down to the question of how do you vet a person, which have not been really, you know, looked into, and, you know, a certain kind of requirement to prevent something like that of happening. But we can't really stop what the government is doing unless we stop it with solidarity, unless, like you say, we unite together. Is there anything else you want to say in addition to that, sis?
Yeah, and the brother wants to speak, right, and I just want to say
that
one of the things that we should do is that we should read James Forman. James Forman wrote an excellent pamphlet called Control, Conflict, and Change. And what it was about is, how do you vet a person? There's nobody in this movement that I know of, that I respect and that I will work with, that I don't know your mother. I don't know your father. I have not been to your home. Of course, I've been in security. I'm on security all the time. So I'm gonna know your mother and father if I work with you. I'm gonna know who your grandmother was. I'm gonna know everything about you. I'm gonna know where you go because you're gonna be going with me. Same as we all, in the New York Black Panther Party, we all lived in the same apartments.
And that's what's kind of missing. That's what's kind of missing.
We planned together, we studied together, we did everything together. There's no way in hell. And of course we had infiltrators. The same man that was the infiltrator in Malcolm X's security group was the same one that had the New York 21 arrested. And at the arrest of the New York 21, he gained his, what was his name? He gained his gold badge.
He was one of the New York 21.
He was one of the New York 21, as a matter of fact. So I'm not saying that we can't be infiltrated, but I am saying that we should be knowing everything about each other. And that is a way to vet. It's not foolproof. We have to, you know what I'm saying? It's not foolproof, but certainly every one of us should know each other. We should know each other. You should know who my sister is. You should know where she lives. You should know my brothers, my nieces and nephews and all that, and what do they do? What are their jobs?
And we need to have safe houses. You know what I'm saying? And that's absent. And brother, do you want to add to that as well? Or is there something that you want to present?
Well, actually, yes, I was going to add. You know, we call it colonial capitalism, and we know that agents are going to be there. Agents are going to be infiltrating. They're going to do that. That's what agents do. But by the same token, we're going to have to do a lot of heavy boots on the ground organizing, boots on the ground, door to door. We're going to have to definitely approach these youth, approach the gang leaders. We have to do that. We've determined that is a must. Now, as far as, well, I guess I'll never know everybody's total family. But the fact of the matter is, we have no choice but to do this for ourselves. Nobody's going to do for us what we need to do for ourselves.
Absolutely.
With regards to infiltration, COINTELPRO is on steroids now. Like I said, we were infiltrated. The bank froze our assets. The bank has the deeds to all properties that we're dealing with. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask you a question because I'm glad you mentioned about the bank freezing your asset. And then again, I look at the revolution, especially with the Black movement, and I'm like, why would you invest money that belongs to the movement in such a racist type of financial institution that we have, when you need to start, investing in a bank that is more empathetic towards the community, and it's a people bank?
And I agree with you, but we had Black banks that were destroyed. Everything we get, we cannot deny the fact we're still in slavery. And I say that, and the reason I say this is because everything, all of our sustenance, we have to go to them because we're not built up. We do have a food court. We do have a bakery. We have over 50 institutions outside of St. Louis. We started dealing with Regions Bank 10 years ago. Regions is a racist bank. We've been doing a social blitz on Regions. But that was the bank that they chose. Now, this is long before I came in. And so when I look at the hiccups that we do need to do more towards putting our finances together for ourselves, buying things right out, not waiting for mortgages or having payments, because they'll never allow us to be free as long as they hold the strings.
Right. But also, brother, we have to look at this. How can we look up at a leader who lives in $1 million home and his flock is pissy poor, where there is no advancement, no growth?
That's not a leader. That's a con artist. That's a crook.
It is.
It's not a leader.
It is.
So we all know that, and I don't sympathize with him. I don't give him that play. And when my spirit tells me you're wrong, you're wrong.
Absolutely.
And so real leaders are like you all. I'm listening to leadership on the line here tonight, and I see mostly sisters. Sisters are the leaders. You all make men out of boys. You all make warriors out of men and boys. Because when you say, look, baby, I need you to protect me because this might happen to me, I guarantee you if he's a man, He's gonna make, you ain't gotta say nothing. Baby, I'm going with you.
Right.
You understand me? I got your back. This is the loyalty that we have to have, even no matter what party, the Black Panther Party or the African People's Socialist Party or the Uhuru Movement or other parties. Now, mind you, just like you, I don't trust any NAACP. I don't trust any organizations that are petty bourgeoisie neo-colonizers that would acquiesce to some policy that we didn't create. We need our own government. Mentioning Africa, we have strong ties in Africa. Africa, and some of the brothers have strong ties also in Africa in the party, in your party. And we are coming together. We are dialoguing. We're talking about building military. We need military. We need to defend our home turf. We need to extract our kids from this brutish rape and assault, terrorism assaults. We're terrorized every day, and we're sickened every day. So I say that Izwe Litui Africa, that we all come together. We must come together. I love the way Comrade Sister Cleo spells out the platform and how you read the platform. That's a discipline that we must have. We must have a focused scientific practice that we do on an each and every day basis, not to deviate. It's easy to get distracted if you're not focused, but not to deviate. We need a platform and we need flyers to do invitations. We need newspapers to go out into the community to get people to feed. We need these types of things about us, not about them, but about us. We can talk about how they destroy us, and they do this every day. They do this for our kids all the time. I hate it when I see our young brothers out there on the streets setting themselves up, and I tell them, I said, look, man, you need to slow down because you're setting yourself up to be caught up in the trap. Even to the point where we're shooting our girlfriends in the head with pistols. That's a sickness. The white man brought the damn guns in the community, brought the drugs that was under Ronald Reagan, brought in this crack cocaine, him and the Contras, him and George H. Bush. Yes, no, the daddy. So,
both of them.
yes, so it's a fight. We're fighting contradictions that aren't hard to beat if we stay disciplined and focused. And right now, what I'm listening to right here at this table, and I'm honored that you have me come on. And I hope I had some good input, but
Yeah,
the fact of the matter is that we do need to work as a collective, collective. We're fighting the same.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, we're fighting the same enemy and we have no choice. There's no big eyes, no little U's, but there is discipline and there is a lot of political education that needs to be done.
And I just want to mention some of the, 10-point platform, like number 8, we want an immediate end to all wars of aggression, where it say right here under the new African Black Panther Party 10-point program, we believe that the various conflict which exists around the world stem directly from the aggressive desires of the U.S. ruling circle and government to force its domination upon the oppressed people of the world. We believe that if the United States government or its lackeys do not cease these aggressive wars, that it is the right of the people to defend themselves by any means necessary against their aggressor. Also, I want to mention point number 7. We want, where it should be, we demand now, an immediate end to police brutality, where I believe in defund them, get rid of them, and murder of Black people, other people of color, all oppressed people inside the United States, where it states, we believe that the racist and the fascist government of the United States uses its domestic enforcement agency, which you have mentioned, brother, to carry out its program of oppression against Black people, other people of color, and poor people inside the United States, as we still see in our community. We believe it is our right, therefore, to defend ourselves against such armed forces, and that all Black and oppressed people should be armed for self-defense of our homes, and community against these fascist police forces, which back in the day, my father had used this and got his ass beaten down every weekend. And every Friday, I actually said when I was 7 years old, I don't think I'm gonna have a father by Sunday noon. Because my father will either be in jail, he will be beaten up and in jail, or he will be beaten up and in the hospital. And when he tried to get a number of people to fight against what was happening in our community, where the kids was being shot up, and that took the life out of my father, where he fought the system, fought the rental agent management, fought the city, and everybody was too afraid to stand with him. He was the lone soldier that actually got the police department, who used to change their uniform in our building basement, got all of their behinds thrown out and changed that basement area into an after-school program that saved lives, that reconnected families, and got our kids to go back to what I don't see quite often. That's off the street and back to reading again. And when they found that that program was doing so good by the rental manager of Taft Projects, where I lived on 115 in Madison in New York City, they went ahead and got a Catholic pastor preach, a clergyman to come in to take over the program, and they put him on a city payroll. How in the world? They put him on the city payroll. And once he took control of that program that my father built by him long self, the whole program collapsed. And there was no more. Anybody else have something to say in addition?
I wanted to share a little story.
And then after that, Sister Zombie has her hands up.
Okay, so there is a part in the book where Brother Dixon talks about his memories with his was it his grandmother or great grandmother?
Mm-hmm.
And it brought a memory to my mind, growing up in a predominantly Black neighborhood in Denver, Colorado, where there was only a couple of us Mexican families. And our neighbor directly to our left, they were like the grandparents of the neighborhood. And they were known as Mama and Papa King. And Papa King had served in Vietnam and was exposed to Agent Orange. And so they were not able to have children. And so all the children in the neighborhood were their babies. And I didn't know no different. The fact that I was brown, I was in Black, I didn't know no different, you know. I was probably about 8 years old when we moved in, and I was the oldest of 4 siblings. But when I'm reading here this excerpt, you know, where he says he would listen to her stories of old while he brushed her long silky gray hair, looking into her big ancient brown eyes and touching her leathery wrinkled skin. He loved spending those quiet times with her. And then he says they were the only connection I had to our family's long, sometimes difficult and painful history. And it brought to my memory, of course, you know, Mama and Papa King. Their first names were Fred and Clara, and they are both resting and have passed. But I have very dear memories of them. And at some point, my biological grandmother and my aunts had moved into our home from Mexico. And, there was a lot of violence, and, one of my cousins had been killed out there, murdered, brutally murdered. And so our family was making its way over here. And so they had moved in. And I remember one time, I can relate to a lot of the different values here. It was expected as well that we would all sit at the dinner table, and eat together. And I remember one particular time, we were all sitting there eating, and, dinner was coming to an end. And I think it was my dad had said, okay, whose turn is it to wash the dishes tonight? There's a lot of us, so none of us wanted to wash the dishes. But I remember my biological grandmother making a joke, and she said, she thought it was a joke. She said, well, why don't you go get Fred to come wash the dishes? And I knew even at that very young age, because I was a reader, I learned how to read at a very early age, and I loved reading. And so even at that early age, I knew what she was inferring. She was alluding to Papa King being Black and bring him over to wash the dishes, and so I've always been very outspoken, and right is right and wrong is wrong. And I don't care who it is, whether you are my blood relative or not. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And so I spoke up. And of course, that's another thing. You don't you don't talk back to your elders, and you definitely don't challenge them.
Right.
So it was just expected, in my family, like, just go with the nonsense.
Right. And like I mentioned that nowadays, it's rare that you would get a whole nuclear family, let alone your extended family, to actually sit down and have dinner. And that's the
Yeah.
one thing that we missing in the homes, like what we missing in schools with the trade skills, where
Yeah.
everybody relying on AI to do everything, and don't realize in capitalism you only need a few producer. You don't need a lot of people. So what do you think going to happen to those people? What's going to happen to us? They're going to get rid of us. And Bill Gates is doing an absolutely big job doing that. Sister Sister Zombie, you wanted to mention about security. Please comment us in regard to that.
Well, I appreciate it, Sister Anna. I think we kind of moved away from that, but I
It's
did
still important.
I did want to kind of tie in with what Elder Cleo, excuse me, had said, and what you said about leadership. I think it's two different things. Elder Cleo, I 100% agree with you that security. Oh, Veronica.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
You wanted
did
to
I
finish?
did I do that? I'm so sorry.
No, I did it.
Okay.
Hold that thought,
Okay.
Sister
I am
Zombie,
muting my
please.
microphone, Sister Veronica. I am so sorry.
Okay. I thought she finished, but she just paused. Go ahead, Sister Veronica.
Yeah, no, I wasn't finished, but I'll make it short. So my whole point to that was that, yes, it's important to sit at the dinner table in that, but there's trauma at the dinner table as well. That was a very traumatic experience. Not just because it hurt my soul to hear my biological grandmother say something so horrible and laugh at it, but I got my ass whooped for speaking up, and I said, that comment wasn't right, and
Mm.
and for all intents and purposes, Mama King was my grandmother, you know and when he spoke in the book about combing her hair, I remember one of my one of my fondest memories of Mama King was that when she got ill in her old age and she ended up in the hospital, um, Papa King had told us that, because of course we didn't see her. And so, he would, came around to the whole neighborhood that she was in the hospital and she was ill. And she'd been in the hospital before, but he made it a point to say how ill she was this time. And at that point, I was in my early 20s. I think by then I had my two oldest kids, at least one of them. But I wanted to see her. Like I just knew that she wasn't coming back. I knew she wasn't coming back home. And so I pressed the issue as to where she was at, and he did share what hospital she was at, but he wouldn't say, where exactly she was at. And I don't even remember to this day how I made it a point to find out what room Mama Clara was in. But I ended up at that room. He had basically said to me, that Mama Clara was a very proud woman, and she wouldn't want to be seen in the state that she was in. But and I knew in my heart I had never said the words "I love you" to her, and I knew that I had to say those words to her. And so something in my spirit just said, no, you need to go see her and tell her this. And so I found her, and I remember standing at the room, and I stood at the door, and I saw her frail little body in the bed, and she turned and she looked at me, and I couldn't recognize her except for her eyes. Everything else will change about a person except the eyes, right? And so we locked eyes for a minute, and it was like, okay, I was also very aware of, yes, this is Mama King, and she is a very proud woman, and I don't want to disrespect her or make her feel uncomfortable by me showing some visible response to how, how she looked and how sick she looked. So I walked in and sat next to her, and I repeated to her, she couldn't remember too much, and couldn't speak much either. So I told her, don't try to speak. She was really trying to get some words out, and it was obviously causing her a lot of distress to do that. And I said to her the story that she would repeat to me, one of her memories of when we first had moved into the neighborhood, and she would always constantly be telling me this story before she went into the hospital. And she would say, you remember when you guys first moved in, and you would come up with your dirty little hand. You came up one time with your dirty little sweaty hand because you had been out playing, and you extended it out, and you asked me if I wanted some candy. And so she would laugh at this memory. And so here she was, laying in this hospital bed. And, I got the opportunity to talk to her. And so I repeated to her that same memory that she
Wow.
had been, constantly mentioning to me before she went into the hospital. And, she mustered up what she could of a smile. And
Oh,
and I combed her hair, and so that part in the book there just really touched me, because it brought me back to her and that memory, and me saying to her, Mama King, I love you,
and
and
you know what?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you know what? Those little things mean so much, because my greatest memory of my grandmother was actually when she was in the kitchen cooking for the family. I had a little preference where they treated me in a different way because I was stricken with polio. And my brother and my cousin was jealous of me, but my parents and grandmother wanted to make sure I was all right, where I couldn't clean up nothing, that I wanted to participate. So it's just so important to have those memories. And I just want to go to Panther Queen. Is there anything you want to share with us as far as your family values and memories of your grandmother, your mother, or your dad that you want to share with us?
I was just always taught to, I was raised with to respect people and, respect other people's space and just, unity. Unity is important in our communities and stay strong, connected to the family.
So
I
what would
appreciate
you
everybody that spoke, both of the elders that spoke. I appreciate everything that was said, and all power to the people.
Oh, wait a minute. Somebody wrote something. I'm going to have to drop off at 11. Okay, I understand. Our brother is going to get ready to leave because it's a matter of fact, it's going on 11 o'clock. Brother, is there anything that you want to say before you exit out?
I love all of you all. You're very, very
Thank
powerful.
you. You got to come back.
I was going to ask you, I did ask if it's possible for me to come back.
Yes.
All right, Cleo.
I just want to mention we have
Hey.
another read, but I'm not the moderator tomorrow. But we meet on Sunday
Okay.
at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Okay,
So
good.
come on.
Now look, I want y'all to know that it wasn't bourbon, it's Pepsi.
Oh,
All right,
okay.
so-
Yeah, but I just want to say what we are discussing has a lot of affiliation with the book because we're talking about bringing our community, things that's happening during the 50s and 60s, and how we can take what we read, apply it to our experience, and how we can grow. Because we can talk about things that happened in our past that has a strong foundation. But then again, we have to discuss what we can do right now that can elevate the revolution movement a dial up. Because there's a lot of things that have been talked over the last 30 years, and we have not accomplished much. Because we're still looking at the ones, and we're not addressing what we need to demand. So I appreciate
I
everybody.
gotta agree with you, and I want to ask you because coming back, that I'm becoming more and more familiar with the basis of what we do discuss. And then, are there reads that we need to read before we come, or are we just on Alan Dixon?
No, you just come on in. If you could get the book, My People Are Rising. I got mine off an online thrift store for I think $5. And the more books you buy, credits you would get, where you will end up getting a free book. Good night, Sister Zombie. Thank you so much.
Comrade
I
Zombie.
appreciate you. Hugs and love to you. She's also the leader of the Guardian Rebellion. So I appreciate her coming on because usually she'd be on Friday. But
Thank you,
can
Sister
come
Anna,
on.
Sister Cleo, and I'm sorry, Elder, is it Sayero?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to mispronounce it. Thank you so much for coming. It's an honor to be able to share space with you. And I hope you guys can come back and we can talk more.
Well, I'll
Thank
tell
you
you
so
what,
much.
you're a dynamic person within yourself too.
Thank you,
Yes.
sir.
You're
I
pretty much
appreciate that.
Friday.
Yes.
We also meet on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Girl, did I hear you say we have another one tomorrow night?
Yes, we have another one tomorrow. It's 5 o'clock Pacific time.
Okay, I might be able to do that one. I'll be back on
send out-
my work rotation on Friday, but I may be on tomorrow night. Thank you so
Okay.
much. It was an
I'll send
honor to
out-
meet. It was an honor to meet both of you. All power to the people.
Isn't it?
All
More
power to the
I
people.
send out friendly reminders.
All right. Thank you, Miss
And I'm
Anna.
gonna send you a message, Sister Zombie, because my signal message is messed up, and I had to actually call our elders by phone. So I
They've
don't
been
know what happened.
flying
Well, you know,
today, Sister Anna.
you put out
Flying
such
today.
good information,
We'll
they're hijacking you. That's what they're doing.
That's it. That's it. But thank you so much. I just want
Absolutely.
to go.
Thank you all.
Oh, you're welcome. I just want to quickly go to our sister, Queen Cleo, is there any last words or parting words you want to say or include?
Yeah. Yes, I just want to thank everybody for letting me share this space with you. And I hope that this helps to bring us more unity and to get to know each other better.
Yeah.
So that we can work together, because it's one thing to be studying, and it's very, very important, but it's another thing when we start to work and organize together, you know, and share organizing methods as well as, you know, sharing our studying together. So I appreciate this so much. Thank you.
And I think, yeah, that's very important. Sister Veronica, is there one thing that you want to say before we close up?
I think she left.
She left? Okay, I just want to end with this little, it's a song, but I'm not gonna embarrass myself by singing it, but I just want to say it.
Please.
And it goes like this. If I could be you and you can be me just for 1 hour, we can find a way to get inside each other. If you can see you through my eyes instead of your ego, I believe you will be surprised to see that you've been blind. Walk a mile in my shoes before you abuse, criticize, or accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes. Now your whole world you see around you is just a reflection, and the law of karma is going to rev what you see. So unless you live a life of total perfection, you better be careful of every stone you should throw. And yet we spend the day throwing stones at one another, because I don't think I wear mine the way you wear yours. So I say, I may be common people, but I'm your sister and you are my brother. So when you strike out and kind of hurt me, it's hurting you. Walk a mile in my shoes before you abuse, criticize, or accuse. Walk in my shoes. So I want to thank you. Please come back, Uhuru, Sister Cleo. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for explaining exactly what you have went through, how we can move forward, leaving those gems for us, and how we can come together and organize and mobilize.
I think Sister Cleo had her stuff packaged better than mine, but that's okay.
No, your folks did.
No, Sister Cleo bad. That's bad.
Isn't she? She is bad. Well, we meet again, like I say, on Sundays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'll send out reminders, and I would love for you all to join us. And on that note, unless someone has something else they want to include quickly, I'm just going to count down, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah.
On 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Black power. Uhuru.
See that we can work together. I love
Yes,
y'all.
we
I'll see you
can.
next comrades. I'll see you next week.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me come in too. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my honor. All right. Y'all have a good evening.
You too now.